This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. Mikey is here with me. I'm Bud, your host, here with co-host Mikey. Back in the Tapped In studio. I still have this like lame ass studio, but look at you're so professional, Mikey. And you got the mic. You got you put a muffler on your mic too.
Put a muffler on the mic. I thought it was better than that big screen that blocked out, Although I can hide behind it. That's nice, but I thought I would try this out.
Probably better. I mean, there's mics are always different. There's always something new going on for different
as long as
mics.
You can hear me, right? Who wants to see?
I hear you great. You sound way better than the original first few episodes. So
good.
We're off and running. So today, Mikey, you said your brain was fried. We were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today. Yeah, Long week already?
It's been a week, and it's only Thursday.
Only Thursday.
I think it's a combination of coming into the end of the month, getting ready to roll a new month, ABP season. As you know, with VXP, we do incentives and objectives in the app. So I've been helping a lot of people build their objectives and incentives this week. And it just seemed like an overwhelming amount. My inbox, I don't think I've seen that many emails since I've started here. So it was just, it's just been nonstop. But it's good.
That's great.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
It is a good
My
thing.
brain is fried for a Thursday already.
Brain is fried for Thursday. So we're slacking back and forth. Because last night I was flying back from Arizona. I was like, should we do an episode? Should we not do one? Because we got one or two recorded already. But I was like, Mikey's got to go to deer camp.
Oh, yeah.
We won't be able to record that week when Mikey's going to deer camp. So I think we should just stay ahead of it. So we figured out that hot topic for the week with you, Mikey, has been, I think the quote from the Slack was that supplier incentives have been getting out of control. So how have they been getting out of control, Mikey?
I mean, out of control might be an overstatement, but just
it can never. Whatever. If suppliers want to do something weird, it's always a way out of control. We have to blow it way out of proportion. That they are out of control.
I mean, it's no big breaking story to know that they're increasing, right? Supplier incentives we're getting so many more of them. Well, we're gaining suppliers, which doesn't help. But also the suppliers that we have, it's like they're just creating more and more and more. But some of the ones that I was building this week were just a little fascinating, a little mind-boggling, and made me think, like, what are we really doing here? And I know we've talked about this quite a few times on the show, but I mean, this week, I mean, it was front and center when I was there building some of these and going, this is never going to work. And if it does work, it's for all the wrong reasons.
It's an accident rather. So one of the reasons why they are surging is that the business, the category is struggling. So are you seeing a lot of people having a lot of craft suppliers move in, a lot of RTD suppliers? Are those the two categories where you see an explosion in supplier incentives, or is there some other category?
No, and it's, the ones that are getting a little outrageous are some of the newcomers, actually some suppliers and brands that I had not heard of, probably a little bit smaller, localized for some of the clients that I was working on. But it was a brand new brand that had, to my knowledge, I think it launched 2 months ago. And kind of a niche item, kind of a smaller market. And the incentive, I think it was $2 a case for new placement.
Mm-hmm.
But the hurdle was 5 case minimum delivery. Now, if I'm trying to get a brand new item in the store and I'm being incentivized to get this item on the shelf to make where it makes sense, I might not want to sell 5 cases into half of my accounts because I know the volume's not there. The velocity's not there, so now you just shot yourself in the foot by saying, hey, here's this big hurdle. Yeah, we want the rate of sales. Who doesn't want the volume and the rate of sale? But to force that upon somebody that's going to take it for the first time. And now how many retailers are going to say, no, give me one case. Right now, yeah, the rep's not getting incentivized. He's not getting any dollars out of it. And I also feel like I can't imagine anybody on that sales team even paying half a damn to it. I mean, why would you, right? When you're being forced to shove 5 cases of a new item into some of your stores.
So it was $2 a case. Was it $2 a case or $2 a placement?
It was $2 a placement
And does
for the
and
placement.
but a placement needed to be 5 cases.
Needed to be 5 cases.
Okay,
No,
so
I take that back. I take that back. Now that I think it was $2 a case because the total was $10 when you got
total
all
was
five
10 bucks.
cases. Yeah,
Got
so
it.
ten
Okay.
bucks a pod with the 5 case minimum
So
to
for
qualify.
me, like this is a perfect example of one of the reasons that why these things are surging the way they're surging is that the category is getting crowded because the category, which is already is crowded, but the category has got headwinds, massive headwinds related to consumption, consumer behavior, and everybody is fighting for a shrinking pie right now. So when we're fighting for a shrinking pie, we're going to the people are going to throw investment dollars at it in new ways and in new creative ways. And what I am reading through the tea leaves of that is that I can spend $2 a case, but to really make it ROI positive for me as a supplier, I have to sell 5 cases to that individual location because my P&L is dictating that in some way, shape, or form. And that's the piece that I'm seeing. And I think as an operator of one of these wholesalers, you got to pick through the tea leaves and understand what might a supplier be trying to get done with their constraints on their P&L and why they might be doing that and understanding that. And then you can start to like, hey, are you only doing this because that is ROI positive for you when you hit that number? Is, this is why it won't work. These are challenges with that. This is how the reps won't pay attention to it. Because I'm with you, Mikey. Like, trial, I understand if you want to do a display or you want to get more volume into the store, but placements and availability is one thing. Displays and scale of view or features or anything like that, like merchandising and point of sale in the store, that's a whole nother ball of wax, in my opinion. You probably need to crack that egg open and do it a couple different ways rather than one rather than kind of force that down their throats or force that process down the reps.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just seeing stuff like that come out and not only be presented to wholesalers in such a way, but also being presented to the reps too, where those are kind of the conversations that we need to have with our suppliers when we're sitting down in ABP season or we're picking and choosing what incentives we have. When we see something like that is going to discourage our reps, go against what we're trying to, accomplish, right, with controlling finished product loss, but getting some new placements out there and increasing volume and gross profit. When it goes against all of that, because if we're paying somebody to shove 5 cases in an account that we know it won't sell, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So
And
what
as
do
a
we
management
do?
crew, we're asking our reps to do something that we know that doesn't make sense, and they know that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So what happened when you played that out? Did you just use the tool to execute the supplier's vision, or did you reorganize it?
Actually, man, a funny story. We because we had for that client, I think we were loading about 10 supplier incentives, and we got to that one, and I was loading it, and I started walking through it, and I started talking about it, kind of like I am now. And the client was like, he goes, I never really did like this one. I'm not really fond of this one. And I explained my point of view on it. And he goes, nope, I agree with you. Let's throw it out. We're not running it.
There
So
you
we threw it out.
go.
And now the
Bounced it right out.
supplier gets zero incentive play.
Bounced it right out of there. I love it. And then at the end of the day, so like these supplier incentives are gravy. And when they're gravy for a rep, we're going to self-select into things at a rep level that the reps think will work for their route and for their customer base or their client base, however kind of routes that they've got. And when you make it too complicated or when you make it such a high hurdle like that, there's another reason is to like just bounce it out of there, send it home. Where we fall short as operators, and we've had this challenge too, Mikey, is that we don't cut the head off right away. Like And this took us a long time to figure this out at Atlas too, of just like, hey, we're not doing that. And
Yeah.
just telling them right away, like, that's not going to work for us. Well, it works for everybody else. How many times did we hear that? And it was just like, I don't care if it works for anybody else at all. This doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
And
And I'm not like everybody else.
that's all I care about is that this works for me, bro. I don't care one bit. And this like using using another wholesaler's view to get me to follow along is never going to work,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't work for any of you, because it too like we should be beating our own drum to the way we want to run our sales team and our organizations. We know our markets, we know how they work, we know why they work the way that they work, and we know our teams and how our teams. And just because the next door wholesaler says yes, because they don't care, they're not focused on this, they just want to get through the conversation. There's a whole myriad of reasons why to just brush this stuff off and publish it and move on. You just want to tolerate it or one thing or another. But to me, there's an even bigger host of reasons to confront it. This won't work. This will work. This is how we are going to do this. If you want to work with us, this is how it's going to work in our market. And
Yeah.
that's just where we chose to sit more often. It wasn't combative. It was educational, and we're doing the best thing for the collective business between the supplier and ourselves.
And you had a backbone, right? You weren't just accepting everything that was being thrown your way. You weren't being combative, but you were saying, hey, this isn't going to work for my market, and this is why.
Yeah.
Right. Now let's use some data points to figure out what will work for my market. And then let's come up with a program around that, or some targets around that. And I mean, when I think back to just our little bubble, when you're talking about comparing to other wholesalers, right? It might work in other markets, it might work for other distributors. But when I look at our little bubble and how diverse our market was, and just, in that small little area, how each route was different, and, what sold, and everything else. And now when I think about traveling all across the country and working with different wholesalers, how different every distributor is too, and their individualized markets. And it's just crazy of what works and what doesn't. So there is really no one size fit all incentive. It has to be customized for what's right for the company. Basically we're wanting to foster the behaviors that are going to benefit the company. That's really, sustainable growth, building customer relationships, everything that we're focused on as a company. That's what we should be focused on when we're incentivizing.
Yep. And then balancing your objectives here too, like what your business, what your wholesaler wants to get done is more important than what the supplier wants to get done. At the end of the day, your P&L has to pay your people and sustain your business, not your supplier's P&L. So we chose to take a big introverted look or introspective look of what do we need to get done to make our business profitable, because the suppliers are doing the same thing. And we've talked about this, like we're going to align like 95% of the time. So that's going to happen. And we need to be okay with having the 5% where there's some misalignment and having some discussions around how to close that gap. Because we can close that gap if we move a little bit and the suppliers move a little bit. Because that supplier, you could have easily gone back to the supplier and said, hey, your new product, we're not going to do a minimum 5 placements. If we want to do a distribution drive, and we're going to run placements to get product availability and marketing out there and dollars and facings, then we should do a reasonable pod drive. If that's, $2 a pod and it's a minimum of 3 pods to try to billboard stuff and create some shelf space, that's something that would be a good start. But we're not going to have the guys place 5 cases just because you want to hit a volume goal. And we'll start there with a feature and display kicker or something like that. And if they do all of that, then they make a little bit more. And then great. And then we see how it goes. And then we loop back around to the next iteration, which could be more displays. It could be more features. It could be expanding a different, for is a very C-store centric product or gas station centric product. Maybe it's expanding to small grocery or another store category. Who knows? But you can kind of slow roll this piece by piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big takeaway there is flexibility versus rigid incentives, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that you can go back and negotiate some of these incentives that are being tossed your way, and not just being the yes guy or the yes girl, and accepting everything that's being tossed your way. Customize it, dig into it. What is the ultimate goal? What are you trying to get as a supplier? What are they trying to get? Typically volume, right? They want
It's all
points of
volume.
distribution and volume. That's what they're
Yep.
after. Okay, cool. Well, how can we take this incentive that you threw at me that doesn't help me as a company, doesn't align with my company objectives, but how can we turn that and flip that around to where it does? You know?
Yep. Yep. That's as simple as it is to me too. Like all these things come back to that we want to drive volume and we want to drive placements. And if we're not doing those two things, and for you and I, like we've always been so focused on, we understood that the business says volume or the industry says volume. We've moved the language on purpose to velocity, because velocity to me is it's volume, but it actually is a more elegant version of it because it's actually pull through, it's sell through. Volume in a supplier's world can be like, hey, I just want to sell the product to you, the wholesaler, and then I want to try to manufacture a way that you can get it out of your warehouse. But it's not actually gone from either of our problems until it goes home with the consumer and is in their belly. So
Absolutely.
it, to me, that velocity piece is what is more important around how do we grow the velocity and the turns, not just get the volume out. I got an argument with a supplier once. It was just like, well, this is so simple. Like, we should just do this incentive and you should buy a pallet of this. And I'm like, yeah, you know why this isn't so simple? Because there's 160 cases on your pallet, and it's a full gone conclusion that you have sold 160 cases when I buy that
Mm-hmm.
from you. But it's not a foregone conclusion for me that it sells or that it goes out the door. Because if it goes out the door and it doesn't actually turn and there's no velocity to it, I'm going to come back and pick all this up and eat it. Like, this is a problem that just vanishes for you and then becomes a problem. It becomes a continual problem for me that lasts 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, depending on, or even longer, depending on how long the shelf life is. So it's just like we've got to have a better, elegant process for this as well. It's just got to be smarter. What was one
Yeah.
of your favorite ones you built this week, Mikey?
Man, I mean, I might get some pushback on saying this, but I don't really have a favorite incentive. I don't really care for incentives all that much. But if I had to think about one, I don't have one particular, but it would be definitely something that fostered the behaviors for growth, like what you were saying, right? That is going to not just sell that product in, but sell that product through.
Yep.
And I wanted to comment on what you were just saying there too about velocity versus volume. I mean, I go back to when I would run sales reports for suppliers on different brands, whether they were coming in the market and they wanted to go visit some of the accounts that were doing great with this brand, or we were targeting those accounts for different brands because they did good with certain brands. And I always broke my sales report out by month instead of just looking at a year to date and taking 7 months worth of sales and saying, okay, well, this account sold 50 cases, this account sold 30 cases, and this one's at 40. I can look and say, well, this account has been consistently selling 4 cases a month the entire time, where account A that sold 50 cases might have taken 25 right off the bat, or 40 or 50 right off the bat, and now they're not selling through right at that rate. But now the account that is actually continually to turn that product every month, that's my account that's doing well. That's where I'm winning at in that account.
100%. The piece that you're probably get most excited about is when they're twofer incentives. They have a more than just one. They're two for you can align with a supplier's need to get some focus, and you can align the process to maintain or get that focus, that extra focus from the sales team through a velocity and profit lens. And if you can do that, those are the ones you're probably going to enjoy the most. So that would be kind of like the advice that I have when people are trying to look at this and say, okay, what do we need to be focused on, or do we need to modify it? They need to become aligned into what the distribution companies, the distributor companies' goals are. We can align them to that and make them twofer, then we're moving momentum forward on all of that. When they get out of whack and they move too far to the left or the right, or actually are directly opposing the company's goals, that's when we get a problem.
Absolutely. Our incentives should be a tool to help us hit our company objectives. We should be using them in such a way to where we have this company objective. This is where we want to be. Now we have some incentives to use as tools to help us get there.
Exactly. Yep. I love it. Mikey, anything else we learned this week from, do you think a lot of this is coming from ABP season?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure a lot of it is.
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head with, just the state of the industry right now. And people are scrambling, and especially some of the smaller suppliers that probably had pretty big hopes for 2024 after 2023 and 2022 and all the way through COVID. So, and to not see those big hopes come through, I'm sure they were scrambling a little bit to try to get some, some product in the market, some points of distribution, some volume any way that they can.
For sure.
And it's also the end of the year, and who doesn't want to push out a bunch of volume at the end of the year to hit their marks?
Exactly. It's just a tough market right now. And if you're like that middle tier, I've been talking about this forever. And it's easy on craft, like it's easy to pick on craft suppliers like this. Because if you run a tap room with a handful of wholesalers, or like you don't have a big cross structure, you got a restaurant that probably supports most of your P&L and the inside tap room sales. And maybe you got, a little bit of help that you send out some products to distributors and maybe do a little bit in market stuff, but you don't have a big expense or exposure to a balance sheet or debt in any way. And if you're a big supplier in a craft game, like you're professionalized, you made it on the other side of the curve, of the growth curve, you've got, banking relationships and you're managing your balance sheet really nicely. If you're in the middle ground, if you're in like that 25 to 50,000 barrels and you got any kind of stress on your balance sheet, you're the ones that are like trying to figure out how to grow and trying to figure out how to, manage that balance sheet and that debt exposure you have. And the market has not been friendly to that. So grasping at straws might be too tough of a word, but it's probably not that far from the truth of these suppliers are thinking about and going through their back office and trying to figure out how to grow. And they're going to come with ever more creative incentives that will pay out. They're designed to actually pay out less. And because they need more for less payout to get results for themselves. And they're just not going to work like that. It's not going to play. It's not going to work like that at all.
Yep. The big push at the end of the year.
For sure. So, well, good stuff today. A little shorter episode. We were designed with that. Mikey's brain is fried. We still have two full days left of work, Mikey. Then you can get the weekend off.
Days. Yep. It'll be a fun weekend too. Heading north on Saturday morning for a quick turnaround trip. So it'll be good to relieve my mind, stress and worries.
Nice. Good. Are you gonna go put Starlink out on federal land again and trespass some more?
No, I'm gonna go put some deer blinds out on federal land this time.
There you go. Even better.
Yep. Us and the boys are heading up. We're gonna chop some firewood and get our deer blinds all set up for 2 weeks.
Does the season look promising?
Oh man, the season looks promising every year. It just comes up empty. It's a lot like the beer industry. It looks beautiful going in, and then you walk out empty-handed, and damn. No, season out. Yeah, it probably depend on the weather this year, but regardless, 5 or 6 days in the North Woods with the boys is never disappointing. So.
Oh, never disappointing. Well, good episode. Thanks everybody out in Tapped In Land for listening. If you like this, review, subscribe, share with your friends. We appreciate you all, and cheers.
Cheers.